The major types of moral reasoning can be grouped roughly into two primary categories. The first set of these categories are what we call cognitive and non-cognitive views of morality. Non-cognitive views, such as emotivism, maintain that moral statements do not convey a truth value. They are only expressions of disapproval or approval. Cognitive views of morality maintain that moral statements do indeed have truth value. For example, take the moral claim, truth-telling is good. The cognitive view we will examine understand them as follows. Utilitarianism, truth-telling maximizes the greatest good for the greatest number. Deontological ethics, truth-telling is a moral duty based on reason, natural law, or God's command. Ethical egoism, truth-telling maximizes one's self-interest. And finally, virtue ethics, truth-telling is essential for human and societal flourishing. By contrast, the moral subjectivist would hold that I feel truth-telling is good. But the non-cognitivist would see the claim that truth-telling is good as truth-telling, yes. For the non-cognitivist, it is simply an expression of emotion about truth-telling and doesn't communicate anything about its moral norm. Most of the views we will examine here are cognitive views because most people believe that moral statements convey something more than simply moral cheerleading for a particular view. Cognitive views of morality can be grouped into two additional categories. Those that view morality as objective, or those who view it as subjective. Objective morality refers to moral statements, obligations that are true regardless of how one feels about them. Whereas, with subjective morality, the truth of the statement and obligation is determined by how one feels about them. In subjective views of morality, moral statements and obligations have been reduced to matters of subjective preference or opinions. I believe that most people hold that at least some of our moral obligations are objective, and that few would choose to live in a world in which morality was entirely a matter of personal preference. Among objective views of morality, there are also two categories. The first includes those who see morality as something that is created by human beings. The second group includes those who see morality as something that transcends human nature. That is, morality is not a human creation, but is discovered by human beings through a variety of means, through reason, intuition, or divine revelation. Most of the ethical systems outlined here are distinctly human creations, such as utilitarianism, egoism, and relativism. But some view morality as something to be discerned, such as many forms of deontological ethics and some forms of virtue ethics. However, neither deontological nor virtual ethics necessarily involve principles and virtues that arise from a transcendent source. The relevant principles and virtues can also be human creations. In fact, even religion-based forms of ethics can be human creations if they see the scripture as a solely human-generated work. So people who view the Bible as nothing more than a reflection of fallible human beings could hold to a moral theory based on the Bible, but still see the principles as virtues as human creations. Any ethical system involves both a personal and intellectual commitment to follow its dictates. Any view of morality commits a person whether he or she knows it, to a certain worldview. It commits a person to a certain view of metaphysics or the nature of reality, of which moral values are a part, especially for those that claim to be a transcendent source. It also commits a person to a certain view of epistemology or theory of knowledge, because moral responsibility is linked to a person's knowledge of a particular moral system's rules. Questions of epistemology are especially important for moral systems that appeal to a transcendent source of moral authority, because how a person discovers moral values is critical to a viability of such a moral system. Supporting a particular moral system also commits one to a certain view of anthropology or view of human nature, because of the connection between one's ethics and a person's ability to live up to that ethical standard. Christian ethics is a blend of virtues and principles, and it employs some other types of moral reasoning in order to support the primary role of virtue and principles. It is one thing to use some of the moral theories as a supplement, for example, in order to be more persuasive to one's presentation, but it is a very different thing to appeal to one of these systems, egotism, relativism, utilitarianism, and etc., as the sole determinant of morality. Most advocates of these systems intend them to be the system for grounding right and wrong,